is SportsCenter.
It's a crucial game, too. I'm Chris Smith. In Game 1 against the Knicks, the Pacers became the first team to win a playoff game after trailing by 9 or more points in the final minute of a fourth quarter OT since 1998. But ESPN's Brian Windhorst says there are some positive takeaways for New York.
Brunson got 5 fouls in the fourth quarter. He had to leave the game. The Knicks did a great job when Brunson went to the bench. Went on a 14-0 run. They thought they had clinched the game. So, 2 things there. 1, I think they can build on that for when Brunson doesn't play. Secondly, because of the fouls, Brunson's minutes didn't go haywire. So Brunson actually played less than 40 minutes. So while this was taxing on the team, their best player will have a little bit of extra rest.
Game 2 coverage begins 90 minutes right here on ESPN Radio. The other game, too, was on the ice as the Oilers look to even up their series with the Stars, 8 Eastern on ESPN. On the baseball, where Guardians right-hander Ben Lively will undergo Tommy John surgery on his elbow and will be sidelined for the rest of the season. In college hoops, Green Bay has filed for a waiver from the NCAA to allow its men's basketball team to compete in the basketball tournament, the $1 million winner-take-all summer tournament that features many high-profile team and players.
ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Progressive Commercial Insurance flexes to fit your business's needs. From quick repairs to adjustable coverages and even payment options, Progressive Commercial makes it easy to get what you need. Quote today in as little as 7 minutes at progressivecommercial.com.
Welcome into Raisin Hail here on 106.1 ESPN. Alan Sandidge hosting, Jordan Bondurant on the other side of the glass. We are coming to you guys again on an abbreviated show, 30 minutes this Friday. It's a lovely Friday. But we're going to do 30 minutes today. We'll probably do 30 minutes next week. As we get closer and closer into the off season where we're winding up for 2025 and the team gets a little bit more active, we'll extend the show back to an hour. But for right now, just 30 minutes. And what we'll do today is we're going to talk about the schedule because everybody's got an opinion on it. I have not talked to Jordan about it at all, just so we can have some fresh perspective. We didn't do any pre-show stuff. We're going to do live reactions on the Washington Commanders schedule and the outlook. But first, have you heard the news about Jaden Daniels apparently looking swole out there? I haven't seen it yet, but apparently he's packed on some muscle there, Jordan. Have you seen any pictures?
No, I haven't seen any pictures of him, but it would make sense. I remember seeing earlier this week Marvin Harrison.
Marvin Harrison Jr. looked jacked.
Yeah, so they made a comment about that, and that's typical for, it's typical for basketball players. It's typical for hockey players and football players and even some baseball players. They'll bulk up in the off season and then just get to a workable weight and physique to when they get to training camp or they start the season, then they can really work and kind of shed off all the extra pounds and really just kind of unveil all that extra muscle and such.
Yeah, so I'm not sure where the pictures are coming from. Some of them don't even look real. So hopefully we can get the invitation to the OTAs next week, and I'll see for myself or you see for yourself.
Right.
And we'll come back and report if indeed it's Jaden Daniels or if it was Jaden Daniels in a muscle suit. But I'm happy to hear that he is, obviously taking the offseason seriously because that's one of the concerns coming into 2025 for the Commanders, and it's a rightful concern. Every time you peak how they peaked last year, like nobody expected them to have as many wins as they did. Nobody expected them to get to the NFC Championship. When you get so close to the NFC Championship, the next year the expectation is a Super Bowl appearance or at least Super Bowl contender. You're not sneaking up on anybody following a season like that, and you have to get better. I don't know what exactly you work on, but typically people start with nutrition, conditioning their body so they can stay healthy through a season because their schedule is tougher, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But also just the idea that you got to conform, you got to come up with new wrinkles, you got to show something different, and if you're Jaden Daniels, you got to position yourself to maybe take on even more of a role in the offense, whether it be moving the chains or throwing the ball or standing in the pocket, maybe taking some hits to deliver a perfect pass. Getting in shape and conditioning is A1. And the way we see some of our athletes in other leagues, not in the NFL. We don't typically see this in the NFL, but the way we see some of our athletes in the other league kind of downplay the conditioning aspect, it is probably a positive if you're a Washington Commanders fan to hear that your quarterback is coming in looking good, like physically looking good. So there's optimism there. There was some news out of the rookie minicamp. And again, by this time, everybody's kind of caught up on it. So we'll just briefly run through it. No shock on the winners. Pretty much the winners from the rookie minicamp were all the guys that we expected to be winners. Trey Amos, he looks good. He looks fluid. He's fast. He's lean. Jalen Lane looks to be explosive. And Connerly Jr. looks like he's ready to compete for a starting role. I don't even think it's up for a question. I really think he'll be the starting right tackle. There's no need to beat around the bush. And I think he's talented enough. And where they drafted him, that's the expectation. This guy is our starting right tackle and our tackle of the future. And I did not specify left or right because I do believe, and we talked about this with Lake, that the Commanders are going to come in the next couple years, not this year, but between this year and next year, they're going to have positionless offensive linemen. Yeah. We're going to see a lot of interchanging on that offensive line.
Oh yeah, that and we've talked about that before too. Is the fact that in this age of the NFL and in this era of the NFL, guys have to be multi-tooled. I mean, you don't have to be a two-way player like Travis Hunter, but if you're an offensive or a defensive lineman, it certainly is a benefit to you and your team if you are able to play multiple positions.
Under the radar, but not quite under the radar, Gabe Taylor, the brother for the late Sean Taylor, came in as a undrafted free agent. I think they gave him a shot and impressed a little bit at the rookie minicamp. Apparently the coaches like what they saw. We'll keep an eye on that story. Obviously, because of who he's related to, it would be huge news for the Washington fan base if he made the roster, made the team. Be a great story as well. He's a talented kid. Would love to see him compete. And again, when you're talking about the mini camps and the OTAs and things like that, there's no pads on. I know in high school, we always used to say it doesn't count until we start popping pads. At this level, it's fine. Like you just want to see people being able to break on the ball, having good technique, looking like they can physically handle the grind of the expectations of this level of football. Because again, even for your first round picks, there is a transition. Connerly Jr., I'll use him as an example. Bless his heart. We've talked about this before, but Marshall's Mike Green just absolutely obliterated him in the one-on-one down at the Senior Bowl. And that's a rep loss, right? It didn't look good, but that's a rep loss. You're going to face Mike Green on steroids twice this year in Micah Parsons, right? You're going to be going against somebody that makes Mike Green look amateur. And so even for a guy as talented as Connerly, even for a quarterback as talented as Jaden Daniels, there is an adjustment period. Nobody comes into the league and dominates the league easily. I want to put that firmly, easily dominates the league. We've seen plenty of rookies have exceptional rookie campaigns. Again, we witnessed one last year, but there was a time where even he had to come up with a wrinkle. Even he had to make some adjustments. Against the Philadelphia Eagles, people started dropping linebackers back into his line of sight. Got a little bit more difficult. He was holding the ball a little bit longer. He had to come up with some wrinkles. He had to, make adjustments. And it's like that for every position, even on the offensive line. Again, you can be in a combination of guys with speed, power, quickness. I saw a video today of Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett working out. Even in my prime years of VCU track and field, I was a power lifter. We had some athletes there. None of us would have wanted to be a part of anything they were doing in that gym. And those are two elite guys. But again, if you're Connerly Jr. or if you're anybody on the Commanders, you have to think, I've got to face him twice. And he moves around. You're going to see him. And if there's a weakness on that offensive line, especially at the tackle position, he will be the one to exploit that. You also got a couple guys on the Eagles that, outside of Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, they can send fresh bodies of different ways of rushing you. You got to adjust. You got to be ready. So don't want to downplay that these guys are getting in shape and showing what they can do before the pass get on, because that is very important at this level of football.
Yeah, and one of the things I find interesting is that you often hear, especially when it comes, even at Division III in college, the level of intensity in which they practice and go through the motions is completely different than what you experience in high school, and it doesn't surprise me that is the same sort of situation when it comes to the NFL. You know, the guys are elite. They're the best of the best, and they work incredibly hard. And I would imagine that it's a little bit of a daunting task for some of these young guys to come in and be expected to, one, keep up in practice and make it look like you know what you're doing as well, and that you're, proving your worth essentially in the early going. But yeah, I give a lot of credit to the young guys, the rookies. Connerly is going to have a lot coming at him very quickly, and it's going to be interesting to see how he rises to the occasion.
And not to be lost in the mix, but the 7th round pick, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, also flashed some talent and speed. And essentially for the Commanders, this rookie minicamp just kind of validated that the guys that they drafted are capable of doing the things they drafted them for, at least, again, on the surface. And I think that's what it was all about. I think Krosky-Merritt has a good chance of cracking the starting lineup. I don't – I was one of the folks who wasn't a big fan of Brian Robinson and the Austin Eckler combo. It was more about Robinson, less about Eckler. I just don't like the idea of needing Eckler on the goal line to move the pocket, move the pile. Like, I don't mind. Obviously, Eckler's made his career living on in goal line packages, but they were needing him to move the pile and get the 1 yard or get the 2 hard yards. And I think Krosky-Merritt can bring a blend of both of these guys. He can bring the bruiser of Robinson. He can bring the explosiveness of Eckler in a younger body. And again, knowing that he was drafted in the 7th round, I think it presents an opportunity to be probably the best value pick for the Commanders in this draft if he's able to crack the starting lineup and if he's able to give them solid production in a rookie campaign where, again, he's got Jeremy McNichols, he's got Chris Rodriguez Jr., who I'm not opposed to Chris Rodriguez getting more carries. Austin Eckler, who is aging, and Brian Robinson Jr., who didn't have the best year. He's got an opportunity to cut his teeth into this system really early, really fast. And again, it's good to see with him only really having one game in 2024, coming in, flashing speed, quickness, agility, looking in shape. There's been no drop off. Should be good. And if we're trying to be optimistic, he's the freshest person in the draft, likely, because he didn't play really last year. Yeah. And it wasn't because of injuries, because the NCAA revoked his eligibility one game into the season. So, again, those are the storylines from the rookie minicamp. We are actively trying to get into the OTAs next week, at least for one day, which will be Wednesday, I think is the first day. Either Jordan and I will both go. Likely one of us will go, just because I have a funny feeling that I'm going to be needed at my son's field day, and I'm not a bad parent. And plus, field day brings an opportunity, kind of like a combine of first and second graders. Exactly. Have a little fun with it. But let's go ahead and get into the schedule, because I want to do a little bit of myth busting, and this might just be me just trying to calm some of the craziness surrounding the schedule. So I've been hearing all this about the Commanders having a tougher schedule this year. This is way tougher than last year. And then I look, and some people have it ranked like 19th as far as strength of schedule. I think if you're below the halfway mark, it's not the hardest schedule possible. In fact, the Eagles, I think, have like the 6th hardest schedule or the 5th hardest schedule, and the Giants have like the 2nd hardest schedule by most metrics. So if we're looking, even the Cowboys, I believe, are in the top 15. So in this division, the Commanders are still set up to be in a good spot to steal some wins, right? To gain some ground on a team like the Eagles, who might be better on paper, but because their schedule is significantly harder, the grind of that schedule just through attrition might wear them down a little bit. I think the Commanders have an opportunity to stay healthy during this campaign and to also, again, reach at least 11 wins out of this schedule. Now, I'm not going to go through each game and say, oh, that's a win, that's a loss, that's a win, that's a loss. I try not to do that in May. But what I was thinking is that we would take a different approach and just kind of look at the schedule and then ask ourselves, based on the strength of schedule and based on the projections of this team, is this really a hard schedule, right? So my idea of a hard schedule is playoff contenders, division contenders, or division winners, right, in this schedule. The Chiefs won their division last year. The Lions won their division last year. The Vikings were a wild card team last year. And then obviously the Eagles are the Super Bowl champions. There's 4 teams. And then the Packers, right? They got into the playoffs. That's it. The team that I think made the biggest stride from their 2024 coming into 2025 is probably the Chargers. But they're also a team that's notoriously underachieved. So, I mean, as far as expectations go, they notoriously underachieved. I understand the Raiders got Geno, they got Pete Carroll. This is the first year of that era. I mean, I find it hard to believe they're going to hit the ground running and all of a sudden the Raiders are like playoff contenders or their trajectory has changed that much. Giants are still a team that is going to be struggling, not expected to do as well, but a team that could surprise depending on how much they get out of the quarterback position. But the toughness here, Broncos are going to be tough. They're always tough. But again, on a scale of like 1 to 10, 10 being the toughest schedule, I see this is like a 4. And again, maybe it's just me being pessimistic. Maybe somebody out there is like, man, you're crazy. That's perfectly fine. But I'm looking for the division contenders. You're playing Michael Penix. He's had 5, maybe 6 starts, I think. By the time you get him in week 4, he still would not have started an entire season of football at the professional level. You get in the Vikings, you get a quarterback that's going to be starting in his first season. You get a Caleb Williams in a new system. Regardless if it's Ben Johnson, he's coming off a rookie campaign that was okay, all things considered, but he's learning a new system, and you're getting him in week 6. And again, Geno Smith, Pete Carroll, kind of a newish era for them both. Like there's some scenarios here where, again, I don't think that it's as difficult as some people are trying to make it out to be. Now, with all that being said, these are projections. It is May. Of these teams that you're looking at on this schedule, Jordan, is there any team that you see, like, say, the Lions or the Chiefs, where you can see them actually having a worse year than they're projected? And do you see any team on here that might surprise on their schedule as far as, like, being tough?
I think the Giants, they played them pretty close in week 2 last year. In their home open, in Washington's home opener.
Yeah. The 7 field goals, was that 7?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they played them pretty. You can't overlook the division games, but I just think, I mean, if when they play Las Vegas in week 3 and it turns out that the Raiders just come in there and they look like world beaters and they embarrass Washington, I don't think that would be sort of a sound the alarm type game. I think it's just, hey, they came in prepared and they knew how to beat them. And so I don't anticipate Las Vegas being much of a contender, at least this year. Maybe they could surprise us. The AFC West usually is tricky in terms of getting more than one team into the postseason. So, I mean, the Chargers could be surprising as well. The Falcons, the they played a tough game in week 18, the last week of the season, week 17 last year that we were there for on Sunday Night Football. So, I mean, I think looking at the schedule, I think by the time they get to week 15, where they start that gauntlet of 4 straight division games to close the season, they're going to be very battle tested. I would say if we're putting their opponents in a tier list, I would say that the Packers are probably that B tier. I would say the Lions and Chiefs are A tier. Seattle is probably a B tier team. So
I would even say Seattle's like a C.
Yeah.
At best this year.
The Dolphins, I would say, are probably a B or a C team. The Broncos are a B team. Vikings, you never know with their quarterback situation and how last season went. They could stink this year. For all we know, we don't know. But yeah, I mean, I just think by the time they've gotten through 75% of the season, by the time they get through week 14, they'll have played some quality opponents, and I think it'll really set them up well for that last stretch, especially knowing they have home game. They have 2 home games in that final 4 stretch, so they'll start the streak of 4 games on the road at New York, and then they end the regular season at Philadelphia. So. And then Philadelphia and Dallas come to Washington in the 2 following weeks in between those. So, I don't think it's anything to slouch on. Given how crazy the Bears game was last year as well, I think there's a lot of potential that this could go a number of ways. It could either go really good, and they could start off like 5-1 or 6-1, however they started off last year, 6-2, or they could lose their first 4 games. And then all of a sudden it's, well, what's not working with Dan Quinn? What's not working with Cliff Kingsbury? What's not working with Jaden Daniels? Like, then that whole speculation and everything starts up. So I like the schedule. I think it's cool that they're going to play an international game. I think the Miami game kind of levels the playing field a bit, considering it's a neutral site game and both teams are traveling overseas to be there. And then also I like the Christmas game, the game on Christmas against the Cowboys. I think that could potentially that could be a potential playoff spot clinching game for either team.
They get their bye week 2 weeks earlier this year, which I think will really help, because last year I remember
their bye week was like week 15 or something.
It was like December before they finally got a bye week. This year they get it after the 16th, after their travel to play Miami in Madrid. So that's a benefit. But strategically, they do have some spots that could create challenges. I don't know if they factored that into the strength of schedule. The Washington Post had them as a top 10 toughest schedule. I just don't see that. I really don't see them in the top 10. I don't even see them in the top half percentile, honestly, or the top 50 percentile. But it's fine. Again, it's all speculation this early. But they've got 4 teams, I believe, off the bye week. They have 5 primetime games, 2 of which we would anticipate to be flexed, and those 2 games actually feature the Dolphins, the Eagles. December 20th on the Saturday, and then the Week 18 game is also TBD labeled flex game, so it will more likely be flex as well if the division is competitive. Now, because we don't have a ton of time, I'll just tease it. I think the Cowboys may be able to have more of an uptick of production than what people are expecting, what Vegas is expecting, because I think some of the strength of schedule stuff also comes from Vegas predictions, and the Cowboys are expected to win like 7.5 games. I mean, I don't think they're under 500 team if they're healthy. So that's something that I think we might just bring up during our regular broadcast Monday through Friday to kind of peel the layer back on that, because the Cowboys, the Giants, and the Eagles are the focal point, in my opinion, on this schedule, simply because how the last 4 games are going to play out. They're going to get Hard Knocks to be a part of that, I believe, which is also kind of cool. Maybe we can make a cameo.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
Cool. But it's not about how good your division is. And NFC East fans know this. I shouldn't have to say this. But it's not about how good your division is. Sometimes it's just about where you play them, right? And you've got the Giants, the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Eagles again. That is a tough stretch for the Commanders simply because of who these teams are, right? And we talked about this last year. They struggled against the Giants. They won, but it was a struggle. They actually split with the Cowboys and could have technically lost both games. I think Mariota had some heroics at the end of that.
And then they did kind of screwed themselves in the home game against Dallas.
Oh, in the home game, they gave that away.
Yeah.
In the home game, they gave that away. And then the Eagles are shaping up to be their boogeyman, right? So that's a tough stretch, especially if you end up having to battle with New York in New York and then turn around and have to play a physical game against a team like Philly and then turn around and get that short break because you're only getting 5 days and you got to play Dallas, which again, always tough. Yeah, it's at home, but you're getting Dallas, and Dallas is going to be a more physically imposing team if you expect Schottenheimer to do what he normally does with his offense. I think they'll be a more in-your-face, direct attack type team that puts pressure on you. And what's your consolation prize? Another date with the Eagles after that. So it's going to be a tough stretch. And with that being said, to me, it is extremely important for the Commanders not to give away any games before that stretch.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is the games that you're supposed to win, the games that we can look at the schedule, Seattle, November 2nd, that you're supposed to win, you have to win that game. You have to win that game. You cannot give that game away. I go back to it was the game after Jaden got hurt and the Steelers game. They gave that game away.
Yep.
Put a lot of pressure on them to go into Philly on a Thursday night short rest to win that game, and they lost. And the Eagles just flat out beat them. They lost that game, and they're banged up, and they got to turn around, and I believe after that was play Dallas. That was a 3-game stretch that they should have won at least one of those games, or 2 of those games, if we're being honest. They should have won 2 out of 3, and they ended up losing 3. And then the questions came, and they righted the ship after a while. But the pressure that put on them later in the season to have to win against the Falcons, and for seeding purposes to have to win against the Cowboys at the end of the year, like it's one of those things where you hindsight 2020, you look back on it, would have been nice to have been able to rest a little bit down the stretch or not make it so urgent. I think that's something they'll try to avoid this year. And again, I don't think that the totality of the schedule is as tough as they make it out to be. International game, 5 primetime games, week 12 bye. Storyline and questions abound. You got your second season. How do you follow up such an amazing season that you had the year before? Like, what changes? You look at the free agency moves that they've made. They haven't been spectacular, but the general assessment from the folks in DC who cover the team, and based on the answers of Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, they're looking more for people to buy in. Talent helps. Don't get it twisted. They want talented players, but they want talented players with certain qualities in their personality to blend into this team to at this point empower the culture, not to create the culture. I think they created the culture last year. Now they're into the empowerment part of that, and they want to take it from there. If you take last year's rookie class, you put it with this year's rookie class, I know a lot of people don't like the little short-term contracts they sign people under, but there is a pathway to a smooth transition of youth into leadership roles, and you have your core positional players, your core leaders. You have your Jaden Daniels on the offensive side of the ball. He's being groomed into that. Terry McLaurin isn't old, so he's already taken on that leadership role anyway. But there is a path for a Bobby Wagner transition. There is a path for San Rasil to take more of a vocal role, to step up. There is a path for Frankie Louvu in the next year or so to groom another edge rusher or bring a young guy in to kind of work with Frankie and build some chemistry there. They got a linebacker that's super athletic that can learn a lot from Bobby Wagner, because I think his issues won't be the sideline. It'll be in between the ears, and nobody in the league is probably better to learn under than Bobby Wagner at this point in his career. So they've taken some calculated risk, but they're not high stake risk.
Yeah,
I wouldn't call them gambles. I would call them calculations. And if that's the approach, that's great, because guess what? Your rival in Philly, they do a lot of calculated risk too. They really do, and they
still got the tush push.
Yeah,
so you got to find a way to beat that.
So yeah, I mean the best way to beat it is to keep them out of those situations. We talked about that.
Yeah.
But for them, get more athletic. They did that, check. And now it's about establishing consistency, which they kind of did that last year. But this year is the encore is going to be a lot tougher than the first act. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah.
Vegas has them at 9.5 to put a bow on this entire broadcast. Vegas has them at 9.5 wins. As long as they stay healthy. I like to always add that because, anything can happen. Somebody gets hurt. Things go a little wonky. As long as Jaden Daniels stays upright and healthy, as long as this team doesn't have any devastating injuries, I expect them, again, in my expectations, 10 to 11 wins at minimum. 10 to 11 wins at minimum. If they come in under 10 wins, this will be a disappointing season, but not a lost season. Right. Not a lost season. It'll be disappointing, but not a lost season. It's a lost season if they don't make the playoffs. But if they can still make a wild card with 9 wins, it's not the prettiest thing, but I wouldn't call that a loss. Because, again, if you're the Commanders, you just want to keep putting yourselves in positions to compete for a Super Bowl. If you don't get to the playoffs, you can't compete for a Super Bowl. So it's that simple. But I expect 10-plus wins out of this team this year.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So to me, like we know the area, there were flashes. There were definitely flashes where they looked like a contending team. And then there were times, like we mentioned, with the Cowboys and the Steelers game and all that other stuff, where they couldn't put a complete game together. So that's those two things combined with and it stuck with me ever since I heard it. They got to be a team that can capitalize and generate turnovers defensively to continue to put pressure on their opponents and to, really set a tone and control the game that way. So, to your point about buying in, that's what they need. Is they need guys who are going to play all out, play 100% for a full 60 minutes. I mean, the two Eagles games in Philadelphia last year, the NFC Championship and then the game in November, it was close. They were doing the right things for about 2.5 quarters. And then Philadelphia ran away with it. So it's, how do you prepare for that? First off, how does the coaching staff and the practice squad, that's a lot on a practice squad, on their practice squad, I feel like, to have to mimic not just Eagles players this year, but also Lions players, Chiefs players. Who's going to play Patrick Mahomes in practice to really give them an idea of what to actually expect when the game starts? They can scout all they want and look at all the video that they want, but it's all different when the ball gets kicked off and it's first down and 10. So I think that's gonna be what I'm looking for. And I would think if they buy in, if they do get that buy-in and all the things align, they minimize the injuries, they aren't plagued by injuries all season. I think I think 10 or 11 wins is realistic for this team. And, whether 11 wins the division or not, I'm not sure. I mean, you just never know at the NFC East.
11 will have you safely in contention,
Yeah.
I would think. Projections for the Commanders are about 9-8. Again, I for me personally, anything under 10 is going to be disappointing. But projections for playoffs, people are saying a 9-win team will get into the playoffs in the NFC this year. 9 wins last year. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. You didn't want to be there last year. And honestly, I think you always want to be around 10 to be on the safe side. And in this division, I would still anticipate, even with the tough schedule, as long as the Eagles stay healthy, they're 10-11 win team as well. So you want to put yourself around that double-digit win total to be in contention for the division. So next week when we reconvene, we will discuss some of the top talking points or, points of emphasis for the Commanders coming into 2025. So we'll do a little bit of a breakdown of maybe like a synopsis of what the offense looked like last year, where they can improve, how we expect them to improve, and go from there. We will also try to get into OTAs. If we do, we will have some reports from OTAs and some discussions from OTAs, because we can do some questioning and everything. I got a couple questions for Dan Quinn. Personally, so we'll see if we can get close enough to ask him the questions. Jordan hopefully will be there regardless if I can make it or not, and get us some good footage there as well. But we're also going to be actively looking to see if maybe we can get some more insiders. Like Lake is already one of our guys that we can always lean on, Lake Lewis Jr., but there's a couple other folks out there that we're reaching out to see if they'll come on and give us a little insight about what they see in the 2025 Washington Commanders. Exciting times coming off a winning season. How do we do the encore? I think this is a perfect outro for that. And we will see how it all plays out for the Washington Commanders. You've been listening to Raisin Hail, hosted by Alan Sandidge and Jordan Bondurant.